Well, hello everyone. I'm Tom Gilligan, the CEO and founder of Marathon Tours and Travel way back in 1979. And we are delighted to have an old friend join us for a little bit of a fireside chat without the fire. Uh, Kathrine Switzer, your name is synonymous with the Boston Marathon. And I'm sure that most people have heard the story many times, heard you speak, and hopefully everyone has a copy of your book, Marathon Woman. Since it is your autobiography, you always have a copy within reach. There it is. And it is a very thick tome, and it's a great history book for anyone who enjoys reading about the history of the marathon. But I think really what I'd like to talk about is a little known story that you were involved with, and it was I think an important evolution for you to get you back into marathon running, because back in 2010, you joined us in Athens. Both you and Roger joined us as the keynote speakers for our pre-race dinner in celebration of the 2,500th year anniversary of Phidippides' run back in 490 BC. And you told a wonderful story about your first experience in going to Greece back when you were just starting to run marathons. And I think it's a little known story that is worth retelling. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Tom. And it's always wonderful not only to talk to you. I'm talking to you actually from New Zealand. So we are 8,000 miles apart. Now that's a good travel story right there. I know you've been here many times running and on your way down to Antarctica and that kind of stuff. But it's always good to talk to you, and it's also good to travel with you, Tom. Marathon tours have been a big part of my life in many ways, part of my professional life, even when I was organizing a global circuit of races for women, the Avon International Running Circuit, the events that actually got the women's marathon into the Olympic Games. You did a lot of the travel for us for those events. And it was really phenomenal. Always first-class service and always a fun and exciting atmosphere. So I'm hoping that when we come out of this COVID-19 pandemic, that we'll all be back traveling again together very, very, very soon. But in the meantime, yeah, let's tell that story. You know, of course, everybody knows me, just by way of introduction, as the first woman to officially run the Boston Marathon, wearing this amazing bib here, 261, which the official tried to rip off of me and throw me out of the race, and he got bounced out of the race instead by my boyfriend. That was back in 1967, and it was an event that changed my life, and it was an event that really propelled me to try to create opportunities for women and to get the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. And so the Athens story is actually part of that, because in 1972 I traveled to the Munich Olympics to work as a journalist, but also because I was trying to find where the bodies were buried in terms of getting the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. And I thought, well, maybe I could talk to some of the Olympic officials while I was in Munich for the Games. Well, the Munich Games, as we all know, were just such a horrific experience of the 11 Israeli athletes, which were murdered at the Olympic Games. That also changed my life, because I realized, you know, that sport was also about politics and about machinations and things that I had no grasp on yet. I was very naive about a lot of the aspects of sports. At any rate, I decided I would start traveling around. I had a lot of race invitations. All these clubs in Switzerland and Germany, especially in France, were wanting me to run in their events to break the gender barrier and to get their women out running and give them some motivation. So I had invitations in a lot of places, but for me personally, I had wanted always to run the Athens Marathon, because if I have a spiritual center, I really believe it is Greece, because of the whole foundation of the marathon, and also the Greek spirit, strong body, strong mind. You know, some of my earliest role models were Greek goddesses, you know, who were fearless and could do anything in sports. And so I went off to Greece and applied to run the Athens Marathon. And apparently my entry was then forwarded on all the way up to the IAAF, who said, well, we know that women have just been made official in the Boston Marathon, but we're not ready for that here, and they denied my entry. Well, I was already in Athens by this time, hoping that somehow I would be able to run. But I was there totally alone. I had no friends, nobody I knew. I'd gone on my own, living on 10 drachma a day, a poor student traveler at that point. And I decided I wasn't going to fight the issue. It was a country I didn't know, and I'm not also a person who barges in on somebody else's culture and, tries to, be in your face. Believe it or not, I mostly follow rules, Tom, mostly. But I was heartbroken.
Right, new one.
Yeah, we make new ones, right? So I went down. I remember you got very emotional when you heard this part of the story. I went down to the beach at Marathon anyway, not at the time of the race, but alone. And I sat on the beach and had a cry, actually. I don't often cry, but I had a little cry because I just thought, this seems so impossible. We had worked so hard to get women official in the Boston Marathon. We were successful that April, but Greece wasn't ready for me and wasn't ready for women. So I had to let that one go. And I remember it seemed to be close to Thanksgiving time, and I kind of had these visions of, should I be home seeing my family, or am I going to carry on this traveling? And I decided, no, I'm going to carry on this traveling. Anyway, the time went by and we got more women into running. I created this global circuit of races, got the women's marathon eventually in the 84 games, then got very intensely involved with that career from also a corporate perspective. Then that morphed into television broadcasting. But always that marathon was in the back of my mind, and I really wanted to run it. So as you know, over the years, I didn't compete at a high level anymore because I was so busy with my corporate job. I guess we all realized those things. I felt like I had run the best I was ever going to run in 1975 anyway. When I ran a 2:51, I said, I can't keep up the training that required and to do this job. So I stayed in shape, but not in really great shape.
But the 2:51, was that when you won the New York City Marathon?
No, it was the same. It was the year before. That 74 was the year I won the New York City Marathon, but I had hoped to run a really good time in New York, and turned out to be a 100-degree day. So I had to keep in shape for another 6 months. Ran Boston in 75, the amazing 75 Boston Marathon, where Billy Rogers changed everybody's notions about running. Well, with all due respect to Billy Rogers, because he's proved it again many times since, but we had a hell of a tailwind in 1975, and I thought I was on for maybe a 2:54 marathon, but when I popped to 2:51, that's when I said, well, I had to be a little wind help. But at any rate, a 2:51 it was, and so I was very, very, very pleased with that, and that also inspired me, because I felt like if I could do that with hard work, so many other women could do it if they only had the opportunities, to compete, to be there. And because I've never felt that I was a particularly talented athlete, but I do have a great work capacity. But anyway, so time went on. You and I became friends. We worked together. I stayed in pretty good shape. You challenged me to run in Bermuda, and that kind of kicked me in the butt and got me back in a little bit more shape. And then all of a sudden I saw 2010 rolling up, and that was going to be the 2,500th anniversary of the Battle of Marathon and Phidippides' famous run. And I said, look, I'm not going to be around for the 5,000th anniversary. I better go for this. And trained up and went with you, Roger Robinson, who you also spoken to, my husband, went with me, but unfortunately he was just on the verge of getting a knee replacement, so he couldn't run. That was a sad thing, but we spoke at your dinners. How amazing it was, Tom. I remember you taking over 900 people.
Right. Yes.
It was astonishing. Yeah. Tom Gilligan had so many people out there, folks. I got to tell you, he had so many people that he had to have double cocktail parties, double welcoming receptions, double dinners. And so we were all working 2 shifts
Yeah.
of being speakers. It was utterly fabulous. And then the race itself. And of course, by race morning, I think we were all fried because we had been doing so many things. And it turned out to be quite hot. And I mean, I had studied that course all my life, and I knew that it was a devil of a course. The first 18 miles, 30 Ks, first 30 Ks is uphill. And when I got up, working up the last hill, honestly, I sat down on the curb for a while and I said, I'm not really sure that I can do this. You know, it was kind of where Paula Radcliffe had pooped out in the 2004 Olympics. And I said, you know, not in her league, but I said, I know exactly how you feel. Anyway, I got back up and I struggled up the hill, and there was Roger at the top of the hill. And I gave a big boo-hoo. I said I was feeling so terrible. And he said, well, you wouldn't be the first person that dropped out of a marathon. And I said, I can't drop out. I can't drop out. But then, of course, I went down the road and it was downhill. And it was downhill for the final 10K. And so we could all fly into the stadium where they were playing Zorba, the Greek music. And it was a wonderful, wonderful moment. It was absolutely tremendous. And it was kind of reliving again then all of the things that I had been through since that first experience, sitting there, you know, in 1972 and being unable to run. So it all came together. It was an amazing, amazing time. And I can't thank you enough, Tom Gilligan, for having the trip and inviting me along. That was terrific.
I clearly remember that evening we had 450 people at each dinner at the same evening. And you told that story twice. And each time you told it, there were so many people in the audience, particularly women, crying. You could hear them weeping. I could barely speak after you told that story. It was so moving, the emotion, and that even you still showed, and how you were so disappointed that you couldn't run, thinking that you'd be more than welcome to come to where it all began. Now, Athens currently is a very timely subject. Marcus Simakopoulos, who is a good friend of mine, has a half marathon September 20. He has a scheme and protocol that's been accepted by the government to have a 10,000 person race, 2 waves of 5,000, and he will have social distancing at the start, having people rows of 10 leaving every 8 seconds, and it goes into a lot of detail, which isn't necessary right now. But hopefully it will be a successful event without any great spikes, because they use it as a test for the Athens Marathon, which is always the weekend after New York, the second Sunday of November. They have 10,000 registered, limited in that marathon. They also have a 5K and 10K each with 10,000. So on that weekend, they're planning to have the first major marathon. So if all goes well in September, it looks like Athens could open the door to make perhaps a new way of doing things, somewhat on a limited basis, because they often get closer to 20,000 in the marathon, so they've had to limit it. But let's hope the Greeks can pull it off. It would be wonderful to get things going again and get people traveling. So we're a bit hopeful there. Usually in April of every year, of course, you're in Boston with Roger, and quite often you're at our booth signing books, and I don't think there's any substitute for face-to-face contact with people, especially you, Kathrine, since we're old friends, and it's always nice to get together for a glass of wine or weather receptions throughout the weekend. But you're safely down in New Zealand, and we had a chat with Roger earlier, talking a lot about the history of New Zealand running. But you now, do you have a New Zealand passport? Have you?
Yeah, I do. I'm a dual citizen.
Yeah.
Roger and I have been married for 33 years, and I decided I would become a citizen because we are spending, we were in those days spending about half the time in New Zealand, half the time in America, and it's a wonderful country. I didn't want to just be a visitor, so or permanent resident. I wanted to be also a citizen. So I'm a dual citizen with the United States.
Yeah, and so how long do you think you'll stay there before you come back to the States?
I honestly can't answer that question.
Yeah.
Right now our borders are closed for all but returning New Zealand citizens. And New Zealand actually has been the poster child for how to handle this virus. We're the safest country in the world. We have a very sane and amazing leader in Jacinda Ardern, a woman, of course.
Yes, he gets a lot of publicity here.
Yeah, and she just pulled, as marathoners, we'd appreciate this. She pulled the country together like a team, and she said, it's going to hurt. Okay. She said, but we're going to go hard and we're going to go early, and we're shutting down. We're closing the borders. And they really have nipped it in the bud. Are there an occasional outbreak, of 10, 15 or whatever? They isolated immediately. So I have to look at this, Tom. I said, I can leave the country, come back to my home in New York. But honestly, the management of it has been extremely bad in the United States. There's no consistency. And so why do I want to go from the safest country in the world to one that is one of the most unsafe in terms of its regulation? And when everything I love and do with running is virtual now. We are not having events. But one thing I want to do, I'm going to get a little plug in here. I showed you all that bib number 261 that old Jacques Semple tried to pull off me. Okay. And that number has become a number meaning fearless in the face of adversity. It's also this number 261 Fearless, which is the name of the nonprofit which motivates women and empowers them through running and an educational program. And we're now, I don't know if you know this, Tom, we're already in 11 countries, 5 continents. And right this very moment we have, and I want everybody to sign up as soon as they possibly can for something. I got it on my chest here. Move the World, okay? Move the World is an initiative of 261 Fearless, where you can come out, walk, run, crawl, ride your bike, swim, bring the dog. I don't care, any distance, any time, but sign up for $26.10. You get a medal, you get a personalized bib, and you get a podcast from all of us. And the events, there are 4 of them, are timed to celebrate the virtual Boston, Chicago, New York City, and Marine Corps marathons. And so we're out there in New Zealand. A whole bunch of us are going to meet. You can do it by yourself. You can do it walking down your driveway. We don't care. We just want you to move. But we're a bunch of us here are doing this, and actually now hundreds of people from around the world have signed up. I am finding like Bart Yasso, believe it or not. Bart and I had to talk about this the other day, that the virtual run is really, it doesn't beat the crowd, of course, but something we can do, and we can still kind of communicate with each other. We're on the same page together. We're doing something and moving the world together. So, we're making the best of this in a virtual society right now. It's not the same, but you know what? It's good. It's still good.
It still is motivational and inspirational. I heard that 17,000 people who had intended to run Boston have signed up for the virtual race. That's a little over 50% of people.
Yeah. And don't you take a bunch of people to Comrades down in South Africa, or did it one time?
Yeah, we did, and we had a few people do virtual Comrades. They had.
So I did.
Yeah.
I didn't do the big one. They had a 5K option, and I said, well, I'm 73. This might be my only time to get a Comrades medal in my lifetime.
Unfortunately, the Queenstown Marathon in November, which is a very popular trip for us to go to the South Island, Queenstown being just one of the world's great destinations and a fabulous place to run, that has canceled. We're having canceled.
Oh, that's new. I had heard that actually was going on with just New Zealanders.
Yeah.
Because Hawke's Bay, which is another one you probably take people to through the wine district, just canceled last week because we went to level 2. We were all at level 1, but basically, Tom, we're out running and in races, and right now since we're back to level 2, very cautiously we're limited to 100, but we should by November the Queenstown race should be open. Well, of course, you guys can't come. I mean, I had this joke. Well, I said you could come into the country to quarantine for 14 days. You can taper in quarantine, but actually nobody is allowed in the country now except returning citizens. So there you go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we have the same predicament, even state to state. I had some friends who went to Maine. They're Massachusetts residents, and they went to Maine, and they were supposed to be quarantined, but they drove around for a few days and ended up with $1,000 fine. Apparently, they tracked them through their transponder. When you enter the main turnpike, you go through a transponder and they naturally know where you're from, and then they can track you using the transponder on where you've traveled to, and these people weren't quarantining. They violated the regulation and got $1,000 fine. So some states are taking this pretty seriously.
Well, that's actually a good thing to hear, except $1,000 fine doesn't do it if they got out and went to a bar and infected 100 people, and 100 people infected 10,000 people, and 10,000 infected 100,000.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened a few months ago in Australia. And all of Victoria, Melbourne, has had to shut down, and they're on the tightest restriction they've ever been on. So
yeah, I'm told that Australians don't see anything opening up until about April.
Yeah.
So flights have been canceled right through the end of the year. They're on total lockdown because, of course, we have good friends who own a tour company traveling fit out of Australia. And, their business has been crippled. Australians can't leave the country, and even coming back in, they have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah. So in answer to your question about when I'm coming back, I don't know.
Well, let's hope by next April.
I hope by next April. My goodness, yes.
We'll get to see each other. We can't let another Boston Marathon slide by, but we have the virtual coming up, and it'll be they've got from the 4th to the 15th, so that's 11 days of activities to keep Boston Marathon qualifiers inspired, and hopefully from New Zealand you can be inspired and motivate some other runners with your 261 Fearless Foundation. And Kathrine, it's always a pleasure to see you and speak to you, and hopefully we'll do that in person in a few months.
Great, Tom. Good luck, and thanks for all you've done for the sport. It's terrific. We'll be traveling again soon.
Take care, Kathrine.
Take care.